Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for episode 2 of Trust Falls. I'm Patricia McLaughlin, General Manager of the Anthem Awards, and also the host for today's discussion. I'm so excited that we're now doing our second episode of the Trust Falls series. And in today's session and throughout, we're going to be trying to answer the question of how do we build the kind of trust that actually moves missions forward? Each session is going to be offering real stories, practical tools, and open dialogue from changemakers who are navigating the complexities of trust building throughout their work. And today, I am really excited to be speaking with two of the creative minds behind the new film LILLY. And we'll have Kate Kelley, associate producer of LILLY and a social impact leader, and Rachel Feldman, screenwriter and director of LILLY, joining me on the stage in just a little bit. But before we hop into that, we're going to share a quick clip from LILLY starring Patricia Clarkson to just bring everyone into the moment and let you know a little bit more about the film.
Sometimes in life you hit a turning point.
LILLY! You gotta be more careful, girl.
And that was it for me.
How long have you worked there?
Just shy of 20 years.
I don't understand why you stayed.
At first, it was just shenanigans. I've got it. Schoolboy nonsense, really.
If you can find me some evidence, I need substantiation to build you a case. Well, here we go.
You sure you're up for this?
What time you want to leave?
Now, your income, if you include overtime, it is half of what the men are making.
She was bossy. Thought she was better than everybody else.
John wants me to smile more.
Don't you dare smile.
These are powerful groups. We knew that it could go either way.
You think they should get away with how they treated me?
No. The partners and I would like to take this to the Supreme Court.
That company took advantage of me, like so many companies are taking advantage of their workers.
If she wins, women all over the country are going to use this as an excuse to sue.
I'm so damn proud of you, babe.
Miss Ledbetter was consigned to a career as a second-class employee only because she is a woman. That cannot be the law, and it isn't.
You knew you were being paid less than your male counterparts. You waited to retire before suing.
Do you really believe I chose to work 20 years knowing I was being cheated and discriminated against just so I could wait to sue? Does that make any sense?
You're not one of them, and you never will be. You're a country girl who grew up swimming in Doc Brewster's pond.
That's right. So I know how to burn off a leech.
Kate and Rachel, thank you so much for being here today. And I mean, wow. I feel like even just watching that little trailer, you kind of have the hairs on your arms stand up a little bit.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Yes, thank you very much. We're so excited to be here.
Awesome. And before we kind of speak a little bit more about LILLY, I'd love to start by just speaking a little bit about both of your personal journeys. And how did you find your way into this intersection of filmmaking, storytelling, and impact? And what brought you to this moment?
Well, let's try to make this concise. I come from a family that was always social justice minded. I'm a second generation American, and my grandparents came to this country from, we used to call it Russia, now we call it Ukraine. And they came without language, they came without resources. And as they settled themselves, they were immediately involved in the American labor movement. And so workers' rights was always front and center in my upbringing. So that's sort of a background that I have. Then, you know, as a filmmaker, I have a master's degree from NYU, and I won a lot of awards for my short films, but it took 15 years for me to get my first job in Hollywood because there's such tremendous gender exclusion for women directors in my industry. So I think because of my own background and because of my own employment issues, I was very attuned to these kinds of issues. And when I heard LILLY Ledbetter speak on television at the DNC in 2008, and here was this Alabama grandma, she's so self-described, talking about fair pay and gender equity in front of millions of people. And this was pre-Time's Up, pre-Me Too. This was at a time, and, I've been an activist in my own field for women behind the camera. I know how difficult it was to speak up about these issues before it was out in the open. And so she just was so courageous and inspirational, and I thought I got to follow that story. I didn't know a lot about her at that time, but I just felt in my gut, that there was a Norma Ray, Erin Brockovich, Silkwood kind of a story right there for me. And the more I dug in and the more research I did, I realized that's exactly what her story was akin to.
That's awesome. And Kate, what about you?
Yeah. Well, I worked more in the brand corporate partnership space, focusing on social impact. At any point in time in my career, even at a very, again, a long time ago, I always wanted to find that opportunity for cause marketing impact. What are we doing to use marketing dollars for good? And coming into COVID, I was working for the Tribeca Film Festival, and unfortunately, I was one of the casualties of COVID, and the opportunity to work with this film was presented to me. I knew who Lilly Ledbetter was. I understood her story. I have had experience in the workplace where I've watched issues that she dealt with. I've experienced it. I think every woman has had a moment in time where they've gone up against injustice, and I was so excited to join onto this team. I got to work together with Rachel and an incredible group of women. And it's been a journey. When I signed on to this project in June 2020, we had a vision to be in theaters soon thereafter. And obviously life had a different plan. So I'm so incredibly grateful to have gone along on this journey with Rachel, to have been able to develop my own personal relationship with Lilly. She was a remarkable human, and one I'm just so incredibly grateful to be a small part of being able to tell her story and share it with the world, because now especially is when we need to see women like Lilly and to see women stand up, and she is an incredible example of that.
Awesome. And that really leads nicely into what we're focused on in the Anthem Awards this year, and that's this idea of championing resilience. And this story is really rooted in justice and perseverance and just that relentless fight to get to the Supreme Court steps and actually make real change. So I'm curious, what was the inspiration behind bringing Lilly Ledbetter's story to the screen?
Well, I agree with you. And I think, I always say that Lilly's story is about radical resilience, because she had so many ups and downs and so many, she endured a toxic workplace for nearly 20 years. And I mean toxic environmentally, and I also mean it emotionally and psychologically and physically. And she endured it for the sake of the paycheck, because she had grown up in poverty. And the most important thing to her was to raise her children in the middle class. Mm-hmm. And so she would really, almost anything, any kind of behavior was acceptable to her, to enable her to bring home that paycheck, which she felt was the biggest paycheck she could get in her county. But it wasn't until it hit her in the pocketbook and she actually had proof that they were paying others far more than they were paying her, that she said, okay, it's not okay with me. It was in the pocketbook for her. And that's when the journey began for her. And the amount of obstacles that she endured to stay focused on what the job at hand was. And even when she knew she could no longer win any kind of compensation for herself, she stayed in the fight for others, for you and for me and for generations to come, because she was activated and she had to fight for injustice. I think the thing is, we know when we're growing up that when you have a fight with someone, or kids in the yard it's your mother or your sister or somebody else defending you always has an easier job of trying to mediate and fix that issue than you yourself, who's hot from the issue. And so it's really interesting to she wanted to lift other people through her story, and I wanted to lift her and her story for other people. So I wanted to share that story of radical resilience so that everyone, not only in our country, but all around the world, no matter what your injustice is, this is not just about fair pay. This is not just about gender equity. This is about how does a human being, what does resilience feel like? How do you continue to fight back? And I think LILLY had a great deal of this in her DNA, and it was a lot of nature and nurture. She had a very difficult upbringing that she surmounted, kind of upbringing that could certainly crush many people, but instead it strengthened her. And I hope that our film, and I believe that our film will inspire people, and as like Kate just said, particularly in this moment, to know that one single voice, one brave, courageous voice can make a difference. Yeah.
I love that idea of radical resilience. I need to write that down.
Yeah, and just to build on that, this is my first forte into film. Again, my background is more on the corporate partnership side of things. And any film to get made, I've learned, is very difficult. It is a challenge. It is a challenge from an investing perspective, and especially telling women's stories. I couldn't believe the amount of rejection that we experienced. And so having Rachel at the helm of this project and having LILLY as our really incredible inspiration was a lesson to me in resilience and just getting up and fighting another day and taking the knock on the chin and saying, let's keep going, let's keep moving, this is important. And to do what we've done with this film is remarkable. We were in theaters, we had an incredible run. We are live today on Apple TV, so everyone can watch. And for an independent film like this, that's remarkable. And so I'm very proud of the resilience displayed by the team who got this film to where it is. And again, having LILLY as our shining star, our North Star, it just really inspired us to continue to build and move forward and keep going. And we have, and we will, and we continue. So we're excited about that.
Awesome. And Rachel, I know you said that you first heard LILLY speaking at the DNC back in 2008. So what kind of happened between that moment to now where we are in 2025? How did this kind of development process look like, and how long did it take from that concept to completion?
Yeah, well, the film's been in my heart since that moment. So that's a 17-year run. So it's been a while, and I will delineate it for you because I think it is interesting. So when I first reached out to LILLY, she was in the middle of writing a book, which is out, called Grace and Grit. It's a beautiful book, co-written with Lanier Scott Isom and Lily Ledbetter, and it chronicles really LILLY's entire life and very much lets you know where this grace and grit came from. Lanier does a beautiful job exploring LILLY's life and telling it in a beautiful way. It's a great read. I highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in LILLY or just reading a good book. So I reached out to LILLY. She was writing the book. She said it would take 2 or 3 years to complete the book, and then they wanted to see, if it would become a bestseller. Of course, they had high hopes that some studio would come in and buy it for a lot of money. At that time, I also met John Goldfarb, who was LILLY's attorney, and we befriended one another. He had gone to film school before he had gone to law school, and he loved filmmakers and dreamt about being an editor at one point in his life. So while there were studios and there were executive producers looking to option the rights, he really enjoyed speaking to me, filmmaker to filmmaker. So I did go back 3 years later. So during that period, there was nothing I could do. I did go back. And in 2012, I was able to option the book and her life rights. And at that point, we spent many hours on Zoom talking. I also became very good friends with Lanier, who wrote the book, who really knew LILLY's stories and understood the narrative format. So as a filmmaker, story maker to story maker, it was really good to have her also. And then John. So between the three of them and the book, I could really flesh out a screenplay. And Adam Prince and I wrote the first draft very, very quickly, and we immediately started winning awards and getting industry attention, which I thought, it's a good sign. Okay, I guess I'm onto something. And so for the next 5 years, I optioned the script to 5 different well-known Hollywood producers, believing with each one, give them a year's option, believing with each one, okay, this is and these are high-level producers. 2 of them had Academy Awards. But what you learn in the development process in Hollywood is that these kinds of producers, as great as they are, they have stacks of projects they're working on. And unless yours is the one that snaps, crackles, and pops, and movie stars attached and money flows in or some magic happens, it's just sitting on a stack. So it took me a good 5 years to realize, like, okay, this is not going to happen. And it was right around that time, I certainly have many independent filmmakers who over the years have raised their own independent financing for their own films. And I never thought I would be that person. For the last 35 years, I worked in episodic television as a director. And that's a very different kind of an industry. You come in, you do your job, you work with other very high level technicians, and then you go home and the next time you see it is on television. And it's fantastic, right? So this was my first feature film, and I thought, oh no, I don't want to raise money. I don't know a lot about money. I don't come from money. I don't have a lot of money. I don't know. I just didn't want to talk about money. It's not something I ever wanted to do. But I met J. Todd Harris, and he said, I've raised money for a lot of movies, and I like your script, and I can help you. So that, serendipity is so much a part of all magic of what we do in life. And it was just that very same week that a childhood friend of mine who had seen a Facebook post of mine about Lily Ledbetter reached out to me, and she said, I think I can help you raise money. And so COVID hit right around then. And for the next year, we just had events on Zoom with Lily Ledbetter. And, she was just the most charming person. And if you met Lily, you would just immediately fall in love with her. And we were very fortunate in that we tapped into a group of high-level, sophisticated, brilliant women of wealth who were in a variety of industries. I mean, every industry you can think of. And they had experienced this kind of gender exclusion in their own lives. And they were all, yes, we're on board. Yes, we want to help. And I'm going to tell my girlfriend, I'm going to tell my girlfriend. And I have to say, COVID ended up being kind of a remarkable time for us to raise money for this film. And it was fluid and it was beautiful. And it was a coming together of 200 primarily mature women to put the wind behind our wings.
That's amazing. I love just the sense, because obviously this is a story about uplifting women and ensuring that we have our rights protected, but just all of the forces behind getting this made has this sense of girl power that I think is so powerful. And now that it's happened in this manner, I feel like this film could not have been made any other way.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough, but yeah.
It's funny. I mean, I always say to people, and we agree, Rachel and I have spoken about this, women willed this film into existence. Without the power of women and the collective, we can do this film would not have happened. And it says something to the testament of what we as women can do when we are dedicated and committed to making something happen.
Definitely. And Kate, as someone that's worked in a lot more traditional kind of brand building roles and also within the social impact space, I'm curious your take on the importance of film to really kind of build empathy and foster understanding and kind of shifts hearts and minds to better understand some of the issues that women face compared to other storytelling mediums.
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that film is the best medium to create empathy. And without having empathy and understanding what it is to walk in someone's shoes, you don't have awareness into what they experienced. And so I think personally, and again, this comes as my career has evolved, film is the best way to do that. And so how we align and how we champion these stories to get made and told, because this wasn't a traditional Hollywood blockbuster. I always find it funny when Rachel's like, well, another comic movie needed to get made. And that's why her, script sat on a desk. It is, it's just like, and before, not too long ago to create a movie about a woman over 60, written by a woman over 60, produced by women primarily in their 50s and 60s. That was unheard of, you know? And so that behind the scenes story for me was so important, but also in front of the scenes. And in addition to my work at LILLY, I work with Represent Justice. They're an incredible nonprofit started on the back of Just Mercy. They are all about championing storytelling to use film as a vehicle to create social impact within the criminal justice reforms system. And in addition to that, I also work with Shine Global, and they are a nonprofit media company that produces films about children for children. And again, they both understand, as we on the team of LILLY, when you can tell a story and you can get people involved and engaged and to understand what they experienced, they might walk out of that theater or might walk away just having a little bit more compassion for what that person experienced, and that leads to change. So I will stand on my soapbox and talk about how film is so incredibly vitally important, especially independent film, because they tell these important stories that sometimes aren't commercially viable, and they help us understand the experience of incredibly dynamic and important, amazing women like Lilly Ledbetter and what she did for us as women. You know, so many people know her story. Well, I've heard of her, but then when they watch the film, they're moved to tears. They didn't understand what she went through. They didn't understand what she did for us as women in terms of changing the law. And so these stories are so, so important to get out there.
I also think, if I can jump in, that, you know, it's not just the media that we absorb through our ears and our eyes and storytelling and our hearts and our minds. It's propaganda, and I use that in the best sense of the word. I remember being in high school, and I wrote an article, I wrote a paper from my history teacher about, you know, there was a movie from my mother's generation, I think it was Now Voyager, where he lights 2 cigarettes and then he gives her one. And that became a thing that people started to do in the 40s and 50s. And man would light 2 cigarettes and then give one to her. Or, you know, again, from my mother's generation, how, you know, a woman would reach up to kiss a man and kick her leg back. Like, did that start with real human beings, or did that start with movies and then people started to emulate it? Or, you know, Woody Allen's movie Annie Hall, you know, she's wearing a tie, you know, and loose trousers. And then all of a sudden it became a fashion statement. Everybody was wearing loose trousers. And so this kind of watching, seeing, copying has always been very interesting to me. And as a filmmaker, you know, even in television, in my early days of television, when I would get a script and it would say that someone was going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and I was going into a casting session and they were bringing in all white men, and I would say to the casting director, could you please bring me some women and people of color? And they would like, why? Like, because the world represents more than just white doctors, you know. Oh. So these are things that as storytellers, even when we're not at the helm, even when they're not movies about great human beings, we can affect the world. We can affect behavior by showing, emulating behavior and representation. And that really, really matters. And that's our job as storytellers. And I think we need to be careful and very hypersensitive as storytellers, no matter what we're making. Even if we're making high genre, horror films, whatever we're making, comedy, we need to know that people all over the world are watching and listening, and they're going to be copying what they see. So if you want bad behavior in the film, then there have to be consequences. That's my soapbox.
And just to add on and build on that little anecdote about my life, when I was younger, I used to go to my cousins, and there was a bar in the basement, and we used to play bar. And I'm trying to understand as an adult, I was like, how did we understand what a bar was and to do shots, and we had a cash register and all the stuff? Our parents were not taking us to a place like this. And then it dawned on me, we were watching Cheers. So we were literally influenced by this story that was being told on primetime television, and that affected my life. And at that point, that was one of the aha moments where I'm like, culture is affected by what we're watching, so we need to be mindful of what we're presenting. And if I have the opportunity to align with something amazing like this, I'm going to champion that.
Yeah. And as we think about this too, how do you guys see that role as kind of the social responsibility of filmmakers shifting now that we're in 2025 and there is a lot more pushback happening?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that because, my job was really to define and create and build corporate partnerships with this film. And again, as I talked about, I started in June 2020, and we were in a very different climate. It was pre-Black Lives Matter. And when I was starting to have conversations, I remember having a conversation with a very important brand, and they were like, Kate, you guys had your moment. Me Too, time's up. Like, women, we're kind of moving past that. And I just was like, my jaw dropped. I just couldn't believe that a male executive had that conversation with me where that's what they believe. But the arc of LILLY has had us partner with incredible institutions. We've worked with Advertising Week and Omnicom and LinkedIn and all these incredible companies that were very excited about partnering with us. And to be honest, we did not get the love that we hoped for when this film came out. And it was very disappointing. Personally, I was disappointed in myself for not being able to close some of the things that I had long dreamed about closing and building these partnerships or product launches and all that. And I talked to Rachel and I called her almost, in tears because I was just really sad that I was disappointing her or the team. And she said, you are working your butt off and this is not representative of you. And, what was brought up was if the administration was different, we would have been bringing partners on in a myriad of ways. But unfortunately, that's not where we are. That's not what happened. So this specific film, I wish a brand had the balls, frankly, to really get behind this in an amazing way. And we did have a lot of support. As I mentioned, UBS was hosting private screenings. AARP was hosting incredible screenings. We did have a lot of support, but it just didn't get to the level where we hoped. And frankly, I think that's indicative of the climate that we're experiencing right now. And it's across the board. Represent Justice, criminal justice reform, they are feeling it. Even Shine Global, helping children. Everybody is very afraid right now, very concerned. They're concerned about their own personal job and just keeping the status quo. So it's a very interesting time to be in the social impact space and to be focused on DEI or any initiative that's really trying to help and champion empathy and people. And so, it's an interesting time to be in. And I hope we get back to where we are all about championing these incredible stories and we're not looking over our back and taking a risk that might lead to something bad, because this should not be a risk. This is supporting women, which is 50% of the population. And I don't know how this got to be so political, but it did. And that's frustrating, but it's also something that we just have to keep moving forward.
Yeah. And I think off of that too, that's really something that we're really leaning into with the Anthem Awards as we try to uplift this social impact work. And obviously one of our main goals here is this ability to set that standard and highlight the great work happening. So people feel less alone and it's not as intimidating to step up to the plate, but also to just have that inspiration and to understand that there is a better way to do things. And I think as you watch this film and kind of get pulled into this moment, I think it's also a great reminder of the change that we can all kind of have and the impact of that.
Yeah, everything that Kate said is true. We're in very different areas. Kate is lifting the film up through the brand connections, and I'm the storyteller. So I feel slightly differently in that I don't have the responsibility that Kate does at the end point to put these things together. Mm-hmm. I create out of my imagination, and I think that as storytelling is subversive. And I can slip in messages of how and what I want to communicate in ways that might not at first be noticeable, but that after you see the story and you digest it, you feel the impact. of what I'm trying to communicate. So it's not always on the surface. Sometimes you have to digest the entire story and you feel the reverberations of what I'm trying to say. So even though, you know, we're having a tremendous amount of consolidation in the film and television industry as well, and it's more and more difficult to get any kind of story told, whether it's a story of social impact, relevance or not. At least I can sit at my computer and I can continue to write stories that will have these subliminal messages of what I think is relevant and important to humankind, whether they get made or not. And maybe they will at a future date.
Awesome. And something else I kind of want to talk about, and obviously this series is called Trust Falls, and so we want to zoom into what it takes to actually create trust, whether with an audience or I think even more specifically within this instance, how were you able to really build that trust with Lily and have her allow you guys to tell her story on such a large scale and really bring so much of a picture to that story as well?
That's an easy answer, and I know Kate would say the same thing. It's Lily. It's just Lily. Lily is magnetic. Lily stood for so many things. She was our hero, and every single person that we spoke to was energized by wanting to help. So we didn't have it hard in that way. She brought the trust to us. She trusted me initially, which was such a gift. And, you know, I tell this story that every single time we hit a lot of road bumps in those years from 2012 to 2024, 12 years of it. It was an arduous journey. I hit a lot of valleys. Every time I would write her or call her and I would say, Lily, I'm so sorry, but this didn't work out. And now I'm going to try something else. And, you know, I always thought in the back of my mind, maybe she'd say like, hell, I gave you enough time, moving on. But never, ever, ever. She would always say, Rachel, I have faith. I have faith in you. I have faith in you. You're going to do it. And, you know, I had promised her in the very beginning when she gave me those rights and she gave them to me, you know, as opposed to all these other people in Hollywood who had a lot of clout and a lot of power and a lot of money. And I had none of those things, but she believed in me. And I promised her, I promised this golden goose. And so I was never going to let her down. And every single person that I brought in, Kate, at our entire team, we have a large, beautiful team. Everyone was, I'm on board, I'm on board, I'm on board. And so she was always our North Star. And, you know, working in a team for 12 years, sure, there were hurt feelings or things didn't go well or somebody said something that offended somebody. We never, I have to honestly say, we never got into it. We would just rise above it and move on and do the work. And it was a beautiful thing because she trusted us and we trusted her and then we trusted each other.
That's awesome. Kate, was there anything else you wanted to add there?
I just totally reinforce that. I mean, Lily made opening doors easy. Anybody who saw her speak, knew her story, got to connect with her, was just moved by her. And personally, that was how it went for me. And, you know, one thing about this movie and this film and in the corporate partnership side of things was there wasn't a lot of understanding of who Lily was and what she actually did. So at a very early point in my journey on this film, I recognized, how do I create more brand awareness, more brand recognition for Lily? And so with doing that, I was able to get her in podcasts. We did a beautiful podcast with Advertising Its Future is Female. We did an event with Sparks and Honey. We did all these opportunities, the Power Plus Summit. I mean, there was many, many opportunities where I could get Lily in there to speak, and I took advantage of every single one. But during that time, I also got to develop this amazing relationship with this incredible person. And I would see my phone and Lily Ledbetter would be calling and I'd pinch myself because it's like, how did I get this woman as my personal mentor? It really has had a life-changing effect on my life. But she walked the walk and talked the talk. And at one point I asked her, I was like, Lily, why the hell did you do this? Like, how did you keep going? Like, what what kept you in it? And, you know, she said it. At first, it was my daughter and my granddaughter, and I obviously wanted to create a better world for them. But then quickly, it was very much every woman and every man for that, you know, for that matter. And I think one thing that this film does that in terms of building empathy and awareness is the male allyship that exists in this film is so important, because I think men right now, as women are frustrated, are floundering. Like, you know, there are stats that, you know, these young men coming up, and what this film does, and Rachel does an excellent job in telling the story, is highlighting the male allies that got Lily to the finish line. Her husband, they had a beautiful love story. You know, they got married when she was 17. And he, you know, went from, you know, wanting to be the breadwinner and you know, they're going to tell you you took another man's job, to when she wanted to push and sue, she knew this was going to be a long journey. And his response was, where am I driving you in the morning? You know, how can I help you? And he was with her till he passed away, which is just a beautiful scene in the film. But in addition to that, John Goldfarb, her lawyer, you know, he stuck by her through and through. And he was the one who, you know, was like, we're going to take this to the Supreme Court, you know, and he believed in her, and that belief was what inspired her to keep going. So, you know, it's just a beautiful story. Again, we keep commenting on it, but, you know, there are nuances of this film that I think are so important for everyone to watch. Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, this story runs with all sorts of individuals and their personal journey.
I see a question that popped up about storytelling vehicles that social impact organizations can use. And I just want to say that the connection between, you know, I told a fiction movie. This is not a documentary. So as a storyteller, I have to be responsible to the truth and to what's really happening. But then I have the beauty of working with the phenomenal actors, Patricia Clarkson, John Benjamin Hickey, Thomas Sadowski, who are playing the people that Kate was just talking about, but they're actors, right? And they're in a script and they're behaving. I'm a scripted, fictional, dramatic writer-director. And so I think often when people want to convey a message in reality, they defer to the documentary format because you're dealing with real issues with real people. I will just say that I find that audiences really respond to the narrative dramatic format. And I know it might be scary to people who work in the NGO space to create marketing or social awareness materials that work with actors and scripted and writers and directors who can help support that. But I know that's crazy thinking. They're all going to say, no, I think that could be very powerful.
And to build on that, it is exceptionally powerful. And to see kind of the corporate entities, the brand space dovetail into storytelling and helping to get these stories told is so vitally important. But, you know, the NGOs that are out there, as I mentioned, you know, I consulted for Represent Justice. They are an incredible social impact initiative leveraging film to make effective change. Shine Global, again, they've produced over 20 films in their 20 years in existence. Some are documentaries, some are feature films, but each film is meant to get you to walk away questioning or empathizing or understanding an issue that is being highlighted on the big screen. And so, you know, in addition to that, I mean, there's many foundations that are doing incredible work. You know, one thing, L'Oreal, Foundation L'Oreal, they helped get this film made. They did write us a check. So we are exceptionally grateful to them. So you are starting to see that. I'm currently at Tribeca X right now, so I'm not there physically, but I'm there today and yesterday, and that is the intersection. It's a conference about the intersection of advertising and entertainment. And again, brands are more concerned in getting these stories told and are interested in how do you bridge that gap? How do you get there? And there's a myriad of ways to do it. So, there's many NGOs out there doing the social impact. And I think looking to the Anthem Awards, I'm very excited to be on the jury for the Anthem Awards this year. And I am so excited to see front row who's doing what and who's making what contribution and who's highlighting this incredible work, because there are many, many, many institutions out there doing the good work, and we all need to champion that.
Awesome. And so we're close to kind of wrapping up our discussion here, but I just want to give the audience a heads up that we would love to hear your questions. So please start submitting them into the comments and we will get over to those in a little bit. But as one kind of final main question here for both of you, what do you hope that audiences carry with them after watching LILLY? And is there a feeling, a question, or an action overall that you wish that they'll walk away with?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. So, as a filmmaker, when you finish a film, you're working with your collaborators in a little dark room with your editor, and you really don't know what you have. Is it effective? Is it not? And our world premiere was at the Hamptons International Film Festival in October, and Lily Ledbetter's family, Vicky, her daughter, and her family were able to visit with us. And it was the first time that we screened the film in a theater of nearly 500. And really, we did not expect to have 500 people in the dark collectively laughing, crying, cheering, jeering, and then standing up and giving us a standing ovation. Patricia Clarkson and I were on stage getting ready for our Q&A, and we were bawling. And, we were able to have Vicky Ledbetter stand up. Her mother was actually in the ICU at that time, and she died only the next day after Vicky got home to tell her about the wonderful premiere. So we were on this amazing festival tour. We were in over 25 festivals. We won a lot of awards. It was thrilling. We reenacted that experience festival after festival after festival. So we were high from that. Then, the industry is contracted, very difficult for a little indie drama like ours to get distribution. We ended up in over 65 cities, and we're still in theaters right now. This is a remarkable 5-week theatrical distribution for our film. We've got an amazing response, great reviews, and today, as of today, is our video on demand launch. So as of today, all of your viewers can rent or buy LILLY anywhere you get your media. Apple, Fandango, Amazon, wherever you want to go, you can buy it or rent it. You can see the film today. You can see the film tonight. Please do. And what people are walking away with is inspiration, is hope, is feeling courageous, is feeling that powerful sense of radical resilience. Once you see the film, you are inspired by it to walk that walk in your own life. And so that's the takeaway for us. Please go see the movie. And I hope that when you see the film, you will benefit greatly, especially in this moment in time, by knowing that good times are ahead and you can be part of making that happen.
Yeah, and just to build on that, to know Lily's story, I think women's stories like hers, and this is a testament to getting this film made. Like, this is this beautiful story that should be made into a Hollywood movie, but it was really hard to do that. And so I'm so grateful for Rachel and her tenacity in getting this done. But I hope LILLY inspires everyone to know that your voice, singular as it is, can make a difference, and to believe in yourself, to know that. And I think that inspiration and that message is so important and crucial right now. And so, it's funny, we always, again, we've experienced roadblocks in getting this film made. And so it's funny because now this film coming out at this moment in time, I believe it's so incredibly important because we need to be inspired by people like LILLY who didn't settle and didn't take no for an answer and kept going and, continued on. And I think that message, if that resonates with people and that's what people walk away with, we've done our job.
I think also that, movies traditionally in dark times lift people's spirits. And I very intentionally made a popcorn movie. This is an entertainment. This is a roller coaster ride of suspense, euphoria, joy, heartbreak, and it's a popcorn movie. So I really do believe that you can be enlightened while you're being entertained. And in these moments, I think this is a great movie for people to sit with their families and have a good time. It's not medicine. The message will be conveyed to you organically just through the experience of watching the film.
Awesome. And we have a few questions from the chat here. So the first one that came up is, have you guys ever experimented with fear as narrative style in bringing behavior change?
Fear as narrative style. I don't know what that means.
I think maybe playing into what we talked about before with how we're able to change behaviors based off of what we're showing through film, perhaps, or when we're just telling a fearful story, hoping that people don't go down that path in the same way.
I think, and I'm kind of a little, it's a little, I don't know if I'm going to answer this in the right way, but I think that fear should not impact your ability to tell stories. And, the fear of championing a story like this, of continuing to move this forward and telling this narrative, that shouldn't have influence on people telling stories. You need to keep going. We need to make our voices heard. And so, I think fear it exists, and there are definitely consequences of how you get something done, whether it's not getting an investor, whether it's not getting a brand deal, whether it's not getting an endorsement. Fear exists. But if you are personally dedicated and committed, and this is feeding your soul, you got to keep going and not let that affect what it is you want to do. And I think that's something that we did with this film, we just kept going and we didn't let the naysayers count us out, and we did a remarkable job in how this film has come to life. And especially in really crazy times, this film is needed now, I think, more than ever.
The question, though, asks about fear as narrative style. And so I'm not sure what the questioner is asking, but I will say that horror films sometimes do a great job. I mean, think about Get Out. There is definitely a way of using narrative impact of fear to convey a story, and I'm all for it.
That was such a good film. One final question here.
Lily, though. Lily's really more of a romance.
Beautiful love story.
Yeah.
A film for every emotion.
Exactly.
So for people that are looking to get into the impact space, but don't fully want to shake the table, I think especially in moments like these, how have you guys seen that people can experiment with kind of, I guess, weaving these impactful narratives into something to almost microdose some of this change making?
I think asking the question, what is this doing that is creating good in the world, is always something that me as a marketer has been focused on. At any point in time, whether I was running, I used to run the business for Louis XIII Cognac, which is an exceptionally high-end brand, and it's beautiful and wonderful, but also what was I doing to give back? I was getting very, very wealthy people educated on an incredible product, but it wasn't feeding my soul. So I looked for ways for the brand to give back in a way that was meaningful. And that, in my personal journey, has evolved. During the LILLY, this experience, I went back to agency world for a while as the film was figuring out our footing. And I had the incredible chance to work on an incredible project with FX for Snowfall. But every single point of this marketing campaign to launch to launch the show, we were dedicated to how is this giving back to the Black community? How is this empowering the LA community? These were questions that we were asking, in addition to how are we gonna get great ROI? How is this gonna have measurable results? You can do both. And I think if more marketers start to put on the how is this championing good? And I know that that's kind of, we're at this arc in our timeline where this was such an important business for good. It was Mark Pritchard and and it's on the cover of, I want to say Fast Company, is business for good dead? Don't let it die, people. You have the ability in what you do and what you control with your marketing dollars, with your spend, with your hires, to championing causes. And if you're doing it and it's part of your organic work, it's going to make effective change. And just a little bit at a time is fine, but it's just ask that question: how is this doing some level of good? Even though you got to get all those metrics ticked and those boxes done at marketers, you can do good at the same time. So investigate, find out ways to do that.
I would, again, I'm looking at her question, break into impact. She wants to break into impact, but they don't want to shake the table. How can they experiment? Well, first of all, I would say I wouldn't be afraid of shaking the table. We've got to shake the table. So I would say be brave, be courageous, shake the table. If we don't do it, who's going to do it? If you're interested in breaking into impact, then you want to shake the table. So that's one thing I would say, don't be afraid. But the other part of it is how can they experiment? And I'll go back to sort of storytelling as being subversive. You can be very clear about your message without hitting it over the head. You don't need to literally say the words. Just figure out a way how to get underneath your message. And so that's a way of sort of not shaking the table while you're shaking the table. It takes a sophisticated conceptualization in order to do that. But if you've asked that question, you can do it.
Yeah, and just to also build on that, one thing that was incredible about this film, and one thing that helped us in a very powerful way, was the power of partnership. Through our social impact campaign, and Simone Pero and Jyoti Sarda, incredible women who helped really bring this to life. And I was so excited to be a part of that team. But we were very focused on who are the gender advocacy groups out there doing the good work that we can help champion. And in doing so, they can help promote our film. And so creating these symbiotic relationships with partners like Gender Fair and
National
AUW, National Women's Law Center. That was a very important part of our story to tell too. And one thing about the National Women's Law Center, they are an institution out there to help women, and they were very involved in LILLY's case. And they have a very prominent role in the film, and you really get to see them go to work and do the good work for women. So it was very easy for us to champion their work. Obviously, it was part of the script, but they're out there doing that. So, going back to the question before, where are there nonprofits that you can align with, whether volunteering, advocating for, getting involved, just signing up for their newsletter? Investigate and try and find out where those places are and learn about what they're doing and how you can support it.
And we're aligned with over 225 of these organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which has been amazing. And they've been wonderful to us in hosting screenings, getting it out to their network. They were a big part of the marketing, and they helped an independent film with not the Hollywood budget marketing, levers to pull, help create that awareness and build the buzz and help get this film out to the masses.
Yes,
so we're really grateful.
Yep. The Women's Media Center, Ms. Magazine, Gina Davis Institute. We're in all of these newsletters, and it's wonderful. AARP did a story on Patricia Clarkson.
Yeah. And Patricia Clarkson too, this woman is out there doing, at the premiere, she's like, I'm out there doing Nicole Kidman level PR. And, we're an independent film, we don't, but she's out there doing it. And
it's going to be on Gayle King, CBS tomorrow morning.
And, I will say, CBS Sunday Morning, thank you. That was a huge boost for this film. And that's where a lot of people in my personal network were like, whoa, you just broke into mainstream with this. And so, having her.
And that really is a testament to Patty and her PR people, because Patty believed in Lily and Lily's story so completely. And it's as important to her as it is to us, the filmmakers, to make sure that people see this film.
That's awesome. And I mean, going off of that, how can we continue to follow you both, also follow the film as you guys kind of wrap up some of this press tour? And again, where can we watch it, just so we can really send that home?
So first of all, please go to www.lillymovie.com. Lily has 2 L's.
Yeah.
And sign up for our newsletter. So that's really the first thing that you can do, so that you'll continue to hear about us. The second most important thing you can do is rent or buy Lily today on video on demand, wherever you get your media. So really, you can go on any one of the outlets and buy or rent the film today, and it will really help us tremendously. Thank you.
And personally, Rachel and I are both on Instagram. Rachel is Women Call Action. I'm Kate Kelley 12, and that's Kelly with an EY. And I love LinkedIn. We're on that platform right now. I love meeting people through that medium. I love engaging people through that medium. I have shared a lot about Lily and created exceptional brand awareness for the film through that medium. So you can always find me there, and private message me, DM. I love helping people, mentoring girls and boys is important, and I'm happy to do that. So we're excited to continue this conversation with those out there. And again, Lily's on Apple TV and Fandango. So please watch the film. And if you like it, give us a review, because that helps us a lot.
So you can review on Letterboxd or Rotten Tomatoes. And all you have to do is register, log in. So if you love the film, please do that.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for joining today. This was an incredible conversation. And I think we see just from the comments how much people have really enjoyed hearing from you both. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure, and pleasure to meet you.
Yes. Thank you, Trish.
And right as we kind of wrap up here, I just want to do a little reminder for everyone that the Anthem Awards are open for entries. And so our final entry deadline is happening on Friday, August 1st. And we'll also have episode 3 of Trust Falls coming up on June 25th. Thank you guys so much for joining today, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all.